Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly multimodal assembly for Sunday, June 19th, 2022. We wish a happy Father's Day and a happy Juneteenth to everyone today. Whether this is one of your first visits or you've been with us many times, we're so glad that you are here as a part of our gathered community. And whether you're here in our building in Minneapolis, where it's lovely and cool today, or you're somewhere else and you're joining us online, you are a part of this gathered community. If you're online, we hope that you'll make use of the chat feature and check in with each other. And for those of you in the building, we hope you'll join us downstairs in the room right below this one after assembly for refreshments and conversation. There are postcards that you can sign today. Am I right that Active Voices has a table today? I think they do. I think we're signing postcards for gun safety today, and that's downstairs also. There are a few things that I want to just lift up for your attention. The best way to know about what's happening at First Unitarian Society is in our Friday email. And there you will find information about our Active Voices, whatever is the advocacy issue of the moment. There you'll find information about our UU the Vote program, where we're signing letters and postcards to get out the vote for this crucial election coming up in November. And it's a great time. Folks are gathering before assembly with donuts and coffee, and they're just in there writing away. So it's a great way to get involved. This week marks the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. They're gathering in person in Portland, but I and many others will be joining online. And you can find all the information about online registration and so on at uua.org. On Thursday night, the 26th, I think I'm right about that date, is the Service of the Living Tradition, and they will honor our late and beloved member, Reverend Bill Weir, at the Service of the Living Tradition. And you do not have to register for the event to join that. So that info is in the Friday email. Today is our flower celebration, and I want to share some information about where this comes from. Unitarian Universalists don't have lots of rituals that we ascribe to, but this is one that is practiced in Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country. And so this is the story of Norbert Chopek and the flower ceremony. Norbert Chopek was a devout Catholic. His mother was an agnostic. He became an acolyte in the church at age 10 in 1890 in St. Martin's Catholic Church. And in the years that followed, he became disillusioned. He became a cynic. And at age 18, he apprenticed to his uncle, a successful tailor in Vienna. Norbert discovered the Baptists, and he became a minister. He founded almost a dozen churches from Ukraine to Budapest. Yet slowly, his faith became more and more liberal. He left Bohemia under government threat and accepted a call to serve a Baptist church in New York City. I don't want you to hear Southern Baptist. It wasn't Southern Baptist, it was a Northern or American Baptist church as we understand it today. Until one day in 1919, and that day he wrote in his diary, "I cannot be a Baptist anymore, even in compromise. The fire of new desires, new worlds, is burning inside me. Norbert and his wife, Maya Chopik, joined a Unitarian church in New Jersey in 1921 for the same reason that a lot of us did. Their children liked the religious education program. That's the power of our Sunday school, right? World War I had ended, his home country was now independent, and he and Maya soon returned home to Czechoslovakia. His Unitarian church was the Prague Liberal Religious Fellowship, and in just 20 years, he grew that church to 3,200 members. The traditional service, Christian communion service of bread and wine, didn't meet the needs of his congregation anymore because his church, like our congregation, had people who believed different things. But he still wanted something to pull people together. And so he turned to the beauty of the countryside. In 1923, he developed the flower ceremony. He asked his congregants to bring a flower to their service from their gardens or the field or the roadside. And he invited each person to place their flower in a vase. There was the church community, no less unique for being united. Following the service, each person could take a flower from the vase, a different one than the one they had brought. Chopik was a visionary minister ahead of his time, a bold church, a church thinking beyond its doors and what it meant was possible. It was a church that was willing to take risks, to make tough decisions, to bear disappointment, and to build a new way. First by building a church, and that church could build up the world. That's our congregation, we hope. That was Chopik's church. For this liberal thought, Chopik was arrested by the Gestapo in 1942. They accused him of listening to foreign broadcasts and sent him to Dachau, the concentration camp. Even in starvation and torture, he held a flower ceremony with his fellow prisoners, finding whatever flowers they could among the weeds of the camp. They testified to a beauty larger than themselves and a love that would outlive them. The Nazis killed Chopik, but his spirit and courage and commitment live on today, and those qualities have now passed to us for us to make them real. His wife Maya brought the flower ceremony to the Unitarian Church of Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1940, and what we will do today is not a historical reenactment of something that's over and done, but an affirmation of our continuity with generations of struggle for ever-widening liberty. This flower ceremony, lovely though it is, isn't a diversion from ugly reality. Whew, there's a lot of ugly reality. But it's a gentle fierceness which proclaims that in the midst of sinister days, there is always the light of beauty. We're not here to recall something that has happened, but to remember, pull it together, pull ourselves back together again. And in that remembering, we may, each of us, a part of this body, be a community, out of many, one. Those of you online are not able to participate in our flower ceremony in person today, but we hope that you will experience the beauty here and experience beauty in your own world, that there is beauty where you are. So, as we have this first song today, if anyone has flowers among you that you have not put in a vase, I invite you to come up and do that. And if you have not, that's okay, just sit and enjoy. Ted?
just want to say a brief word about the music. We're joined by Kavyesh Kaviraj on piano once again. Please welcome Kavi. There might be some new faces. I'm Ted Olson, the interim music director. So the first song and the last song are designed, if you want to boogie up the aisle to the flowers, there will be room for that. And the second song we're going to do, Lotus Blossom, is composed by one of my favorite composers, Billy Strayhorn, who was African-American, and he worked with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. He actually went to the Curtis Institute of Music and studied composition, and was a brilliant classical composer, but in those days, racism closed doors to him, and he found his work in jazz, and made some of the most amazing music in the 1920s. And here's the first song, so come on up.
Sweet, Kavi and Ted, thank you. Ooh, Sonia's first time. Each time when we gather here, we start by lighting our chalice. And today we do so, Perry and Sonia, and maybe Oliver's coming too. Come have a family affair. We do this remembering the first aspiration of First Unitarian Society. We aspire to live joyfully and ethically in loving, reverent relationship with humanity and nature. Thank you, Nixons. We just have all the time in the world for that today. We just have all the time in the world. And then we're going to sing, What a Wonderful World. This song was written in 1968 in the midst of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement for Louis Armstrong, as a reminder that in the midst of really difficult times, there is so much to be grateful for and so much that is beautiful. Please stand as you are willing and able and sing out. Let's sing together, What a Wonderful World. I see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, a bright, blessed day in the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Please remain standing for our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. We are a congregation that is self-supporting through our time, our talent, and our treasure. There are many ways that you all contribute here, and we rely on your contributions, all of us. And through those contributions, we make a strong community. If you are eager and itching to make a contribution today of the financial sort, you can do so on our Give Plus app. You can do so by check in our office. You can do so via our website. We got all the ways to give, if that's what you're called to do. And we very much appreciate your support that makes this community strong and allows us to reach out far beyond these walls. This congregation is growing far beyond our walls, and we appreciate all of the contributions, large and small, that make that happen. On Sundays, when we gather, we take a few moments to reflect on the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this so that we remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. And we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating joy or in facing the burdens of life. Right now, folks who are Supreme Court watchers have an intake of breath each day at about 9:50 because we are looking for the Supreme Court to release a number of rulings at 10 o'clock, probably this coming week on Tuesday or Thursday, sometime before their term ends in early July. These are rulings on the environment, on reproductive rights, on voting rights that are likely to be devastating to people who have fought hard and long for more progressive ideas of voting rights and reproductive rights and safety for the environment. These are hard days, and you will hear things, if the rulings go as expected, that will feel like a body blow. We've felt these before, these body blows. In this time of joys and sorrows, I am feeling a kind of anticipatory grief. I invite you to take extremely good care of yourselves during this difficult time. It feels a bit like being on tenterhooks. And there is still beauty in the world. To hold both of these things is the task of being fully human. Let's take a moment of silence to reflect on the challenges and heartbreak that's going on in our lives and across the world. And we think with gratitude of those who are living lives of justice, service, and compassion. We'll share a moment of silence. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. been thinking about this talk and topic for quite some time, the nexus of Father's Day and Juneteenth, and what they might have to do with each other besides a coincidence on the calendar. They come next to each other. Father's Day is always this, what is this, the third Sunday in June? It's always the third Sunday in June. And Juneteenth on June 19th. It is a portmanteau, the word. And so they come right together. And I'm always interested in what two disparate ideas can have to do with each other. And I think what they have to do is in the nature of authority. Who says what is and what will be so? And how do we make decisions in our own lives that will reflect the values we ascribe to the authorities that we recognize? As we think about the nature of authority, today viewed through the lens of fathers and governments, I hope we'll keep in mind the shifting nature of authority. When I began thinking about this sermon this idea years ago, my idea of it has shifted since then as the nature of authority has shifted. But always the question, who says? Who says how we shall be able to live our lives? Part of what we say as humanists is that we say how we shall be able to live our lives, and yet we live in nested reality. There are, by necessity, by living as citizens in this city and state and nation and world, laws that govern us. So this notion of who says is important. First, to Father's Day. Many of us in this room may have complicated relationships with our fathers, whether they are alive or deceased. And some of us may come from a line of men who did not even speak in terms of complicated relationships. Whether they are living or dead, our relationships with our fathers may continue to shift and change as we ourselves grow into maturity and come to see our fathers' actions through the eyes of an adult. That our dads were often doing the best they could, just as we are doing the best we can. Some of us can say our fathers were honorable men, and some are not able to hold that. Some of us did not even grow up with fathers in our families. Maybe you were raised by two moms, or your two moms raising children, or raised by a single parent, or a sibling, or an auntie, or grandparents, or foster care. The notion of fathering, as with mothering, is so much more expansive than it was as I was growing up, when it was one dad and one mom, two kids, two cars, a couple of cats, a dog. That's the way a family looked. I'm so glad that families look in so much more multiplicity today. Poet Sharon Olds, who wrote extensively about the dysfunction in her family, the alcoholism and abuse, has an achingly tender poem about getting through an airport and to her father's bedside as he lay dying. Even in the face of difficult memory, such is the power of the relationship, primal, authoritative, powerful, that this day may bring a strange brew of emotions as we contemplate our connection to our dads. You may be a dad, you may want to be a dad, you may be estranged from your own children, or feel that you are not enough as a dad. And don't we, every human being, feel sometimes that we are not enough? As many of us as are in this room there are that many mixed emotions about Father's Day. So, as much as it is possible to say so, love to the fathers in the room. Many of us, but not all of us, come to humanism and Unitarian Universalism from religious traditions that proclaim God as the Father. Once I became a Unitarian Universalist, and before I navigated to humanism, as we practice it here at First Unitarian Society, much of my theological study was in the service of the divine feminine. I worked really hard to excise that idea of the Father God in the sky, you know, the Zeus-like character. When I was growing up, in the church I was growing up, I just thought Jesus was like this really cool guy with a very mad dad. That was kind of the idea of Jesus I had, and that was a childish understanding, but I needed to understand more and learn that there are people who still have a belief in a parent God that don't believe in Zeus, right? Of the notion of a parent God, Dr. Michael Potigal, retired pediatric neuropsychologist at the University of Minnesota, says this: belief in supernatural beings of great size and strength is ancient, widespread, and probably universal in the past. Such beliefs could be rooted in the obligatory experience of every human that survived childhood and adolescence, that as infants we were cared for creatures of great size and strength and full authority. Why? As let me get to the end of that quote. They were cared for by creatures larger and stronger than themselves who ruled their world. Disclaimer, Mike is also my husband. The suggestion that human development from protected infancy through childhood predisposes us to see the ultimate authority as a parent, right? And so when the ancient people were figuring out what was a greater ultimate authority than mere small human me, it was logical that we would see that as a parent God. It would be surprising if they told their stories of ultimacy about something besides a parent God, right? Human development also teaches us that in the natural order of things, we grow to maturity and often become parents ourselves, and we grieve our parents' death. So what happens in a relationship with the holy, with the ultimate, when human beings are never given the opportunity to mature, to go beyond being the child of the Father? We're necessarily infantilized. I know that's not the theology of most of us here, but I think it's useful to understand it as even as we've left, many of us, as the pervasive reason for the fathering authority figure. Without the protection of God the parent, many of us walk around in the world every day without the protection of God the parent. I am hopeful that we grow into a kind of spiritual maturity that invites us to practice humility and flexibility and curiosity and courage and grace, to count our blessings, even if we don't rely on a sky parent to bestow them. I want to be very careful here not to denigrate people who are theists, who do understand and have a deep and loving relationship with a God that they name or understand as a parent. I don't want to denigrate that relationship. That's up to them. What I want to say is, for me, how do I continue to explore the nature of being a human being without what the ancients understood as a sky father, a sky parent. I've asked FUS member Perry Nixon, father of the two beautiful young children you saw up here today, along with his wife, Rebecca, how his authority in parenting is different than how he was parented. Perry, will you share with us?
Good morning, brothers and sisters. How are we doing today? We doing well? Good, excellent. Thank you, Rev Kelly. I appreciate that. It's interesting when Rev Kelly asked me to give a talk about fatherhood and how it pertains to authority. I was a little stumped because it's just something that I had never thought about before. Obviously, I'm a father, and obviously, I'm an authority figure. But what does that really mean, right? And so I did the typical thing. I went to Google University and found a definition, and I started writing kind of based on that definition. And about halfway through it, I had to start over because I found that it was too cerebral, too academic, too sterile. And so I tossed it and started over and was thinking about the question, who says? And that it occurred to me that I say what an authority figure looks like as a father and how that presents itself in my family. And so I came up with kind of my own definition for what authority is as it pertains to fatherhood. And what I came up with is to effectively be in any position of authority is a huge responsibility and requires great skill and humility to be done well. I'm going to read that one more time. To effectively be in any position of authority is a huge responsibility and requires great skill and humility to be done well. Now, as far as pertaining to fatherhood specifically, now my stepfather growing up ruled with an iron fist. Okay, he was your classic violent, abusive, alcoholic father, right? And so you can imagine what authority looked like for him. Now, my mother, on the other hand, she was no authority figure at all. She was the classic insecure, codependent, battered wife. So you can imagine what authority looked like for her. Excuse me. And I mean, I'll spare you all the gory details, but suffice it to say, by the time I was 10 years old, I had decided that I did not want to have a family. I did not want to be a father because I did not want to do to my family what my stepfather did to his family. And the only way that I knew at that time in my little 10-year-old brain to prevent that was to just avoid the whole thing altogether. And looking back on it, I think that's a really sad conclusion for a 10-year-old boy to come to about family and about fatherhood. But not surprising given my experience and circumstances at the time. But in the back of my head, I'd always told myself that if, on the slight chance or possibility that I would become a father, that I promised that I would not be like him, right? I would not be like him. But the problem is that leaves a void then, right? It's like, okay, so I know what I do not want. I know what I do not want it to look like. But that doesn't answer the question, then what do I want it to look like? And that's a really, really difficult question to answer when it has not been role modeled. And I'm actually going to digress a second if I can. I feel it's necessary to say that, just kind of as a side note, that the influence of historical and cultural trauma that comes from being a descendant of slaves and an oppressed people is very real and very present in my life's story. But that's gristles for another meal. Maybe we could talk about that at another time. But I do want to acknowledge the effects of slavery and oppression, and that they are generational, and they are deeply psychological. But that's all I'll say about that, unless somebody accuse me of talking about critical race theory and we get this place shut down or something like that. So.
No, come on.
Excuse me. So fast forward 40 years. I am 50 now. Yes, I got a late start, but I am much more wise, and I have much more bandwidth, and I am able to be present for my children in a way that I would not have been able to do before. And so I make no apologies about fatherhood at a late start. It actually worked out much better for me. But it has been, it's been a difficult journey, you know. I have a very clear idea, yet evolving idea of what father as an authority figure looks like. But it has not been easy coming to that, right? Lots of introspection and therapy and trial and error, and I got a lot wrong. I got a lot wrong. But I'm here now, and I have a wonderful, beautiful family, and they think I'm awesome. My son thinks I'm extremely funny, and I know that's not going to last long. So I'm definitely enjoying it while I can, and I feel so grateful and honored that I get to parent these two beautiful children who I think they're down at the little boat outside now. Oh, good. So anyway, so I was thinking about you know, what it means, what authority as a father means to me specifically. And so I just kind of wrote down a few adjectives that really resonated with me, and I'd like to share those with you now, if I may. Father as an authority figure is empathic. He is humble. He is benevolent. He respects his children's autonomy. He sets clear and fair boundaries, and then enforces clear and fair consequences when those boundaries are crossed. He has high expectations. He has high expectations for his children. He has unconditional and unshakable love for his children. And he is consistent in his role as an authority figure and as their father. So basically, in a nutshell, I feel like my role as a father lands somewhere in between a democracy and a dictatorship, right? It's kind of how that goes, just kind of the nature of the power dynamic and my desire to do everything in my power to make sure that they are okay, even if they don't like the decisions that I'm making for them. Obviously, if you've seen, my children are quite young, and kind of what Kelli alluded to, I'm basically kind of their God, right? And that's a huge responsibility. And I know that also will not last long. Eventually, sooner or later, hopefully, they will see me for who I really truly am, as a loving but fallible human being. Hopefully they come to that later than sooner, because I like being their God, but they'll get to that. My role as father and authority figure is evolving, and it is changing, and will continue to do so as my children grow, and it is my responsibility as their parent to be flexible and to evolve and grow as they do. And so my hope and my goal is to model authority in such a way that my children respect authority and question authority, right? Don't believe everything that you're told because someone is in a position of authority, okay? And so my hope is that they will practice authority in their own lives with the skill and humility that it deserves. Because one day they will likely find themselves in a position of authority, either professionally or personally. Maybe they will become parents. And so with that in mind, I feel like to be able to positively, effectively role model authority as a father for my children is a beautiful, beautiful gift that I give them. It's a wonderful skill. It's a wonderful gift that I can pass on to them and that they can keep with them for the rest of their lives. And hopefully they will pass that on to the people who they come in contact with. So, with that being said, happy Father's Day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Perry, I know you share that authority with your amazing partner, your life partner, Rebecca, and I'm so glad that you are part of you and your family are part of our community here. So I want to just shift a little bit, and I won't spend a long time on this, but I want to say how I tie Juneteenth into this, and I appreciate you're talking about the generational impact and trauma of enslavement in this country. So you know this story, but I'm going to give you the bones of it. In the midst of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln signed the executive order, the Emancipation Proclamation, on January 1st, 1863. The war raged on for another 2 years, and on April 1865, General Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox. Lincoln was shot just 5 days later on April 14th. Reconstruction in the federal states began during the war and continued in earnest after it, carried out largely by the Union military in the former Confederate states. To ensure emancipation and to prevent violence against the enslaved people who had now been free, as well as to shift the economies from labor from enslavement to paid labor. Okay, April gave way to May, and May gave way to June, and my home state of Texas had not yet recognized the end of the war. Chaos and mayhem were reigning in Texas, the order of the day. Troops had fallen into thievery and looting. These are Confederate troops. Soldiers and civilians plundered the garrison and storehouses. They plundered a train. There were gunpowder explosions. The treasury in Austin was raided. This is not last week. This is 1863. By the end of May, half of the Confederate forces had deserted or been disbanded, and order disappeared into lawlessness in many areas of the state. Into this mayhem, Union General Gordon Granger sailed into Galveston on a steamy Monday, June 19th, to issue this proclamation. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves shall be free. It goes on. What he says goes on. but it took the authority of the government that won the war, that kept the Union together, to come in and say, the slaves, the people who are enslaved, are free. Until someone with the authority to say so and to back it up, he came with troops. The people, descended into lawlessness, could just do whatever the heck they wanted to do. And that's why Juneteenth is a day. When I was growing up in Texas, I thought it was just our holiday, because I'd learned that piece of Texas history. I didn't learn very much about, I'm not even sure I learned that in school, but I learned it because Juneteenth was a big celebration in Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas. This is only the second year that it is a federal holiday. It's been celebrated in Minnesota for quite some time, but only the second year that it's a federal holiday. That takes a lot of work to get it to be a federal holiday. Who says? Enough people say, this is important, we must recognize this. This is part of our history that we must uphold. What is important is that no one is free until all are free. That's who says. That's why Juneteenth is so important. And so, I love the combination of Juneteenth and Father's Day. I hope that in coming years, when it comes up and you'll think, what do those have to do with each other? And you'll think, oh, I know. It's about authority and who says. We have to be careful about what the government tells us we can do and cannot do. As we well know, that the government is not the great parent, and we are a part of it. That's what our UU the Vote work is about. That's what our advocacy work is about. That's what being a resistance is about. As we see things we disagree with, and the stakes are very high, there has always been a resistance, and we are part of that resistance. I think that's what I have to say today. I'm so glad we're here. I think we're going to sing again, and then we'll share some flowers in a few minutes. So we're going to sing the song, Be the Change. We've sung this before here. As you're willing, please stand and you'll see the lyrics here up on the screen. Join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again. Our flower celebration is not complete until we take a flower that has been freely offered. I think there are enough flowers up here for everyone to have one. Even if you didn't bring a flower, it just doesn't matter. We'll just play loaves and fishes with these flowers and pretend there'll be enough. It's not a diversion from ugly reality, but a gentle fierceness that proclaims the beauty in the midst of sinister days. As Ted and Kavi play us out, please come up and take a flower and take it with you today.